Hey guys, NATO here. Today I'm going to tell you guys a story about this van sitting here behind me. I have a sentimental place in my life for big conversion vans like this. For those of you that don't already know, my dad was in a wheelchair, and we always required to drive around vans to get anywhere we wanted to go. So I spent a lot of time with him in vans. We used to always have Dodgers growing up, but I'm more into Fords, and so I've kind of went into Ford vans. I've had a couple of old Dodges like the ones that he had, but they always break down, so I went in with Ford. This van, my dad, he was really into Star Trek. He thought the show was awesome, and so I kind of used to watch the show with him, and he called his van, which was a big old white van, the Enterprise. And it got wrecked by my cousin, and then so they had to rebuild it, and then we called it the Enterprise A. And then later on, that van was gotten rid of. We had to get another van, and we called it the Enterprise B. And so the name continued. Well, this is the Enterprise C. My dad is no longer with me, but I'm continuing the legacy with a van called the Enterprise. And so this is the Enterprise C that I have behind me here. Now, the really cool thing about this van is any of my vehicles actually is when I get a vehicle, I very rarely get rid of it. I have to there's going to be a really significant reason for me to get rid of a vehicle. Well, this one has been with me since the early 2000s. It is a 2000. I got it when it had 60,000 miles on it. It now has over 166,000 miles on it, so I put a lot of miles on it. But I've driven this thing all over the place. I used to go around, traveling around the country, liquidating out big box stores like Sears and Kmart's, and I'd have to put big signs on the panels of this van saying store closing and the location. And I was doing this all over the Dakotas, Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, Indiana, all over the place. And I would travel around with these big signs on the vans that say store closing. So had a lot of really interesting road trips across the country with this van, and I would camp in it. And so I've got some really interesting stories about camping in it, or other vans of mine. I've had used more than one to do the job because I had to have two in most locations. But a couple of really interesting stories about this van is that one, it has a lot of dings on it, and that's just part of the story. The side doors here got two big holes, two big dents in them, because when I was going through North Dakota, I was driving through a blizzard, and I had to be there at a very specific time in the morning, so I had to drive through the night. And why this was going on while I was driving up to North Dakota, the chase for the Boston Bombers was taking place, and they ended up catching them while I was traveling, and I got to hear the whole thing play live over the radio in this van. So that was kind of cool. But there was a semi that was in front of me, and it just fell over in the blizzard, and I was going faster than I needed to be, and I had to evade from going into the back of the semi. So I turned this van sideways, and you can see the little bitty dimple here in the front bumper as that was coming around the back of the semi trailer. I was able to get it corrected, and then I end up needling two farmer poles. The farmer poles are little like cement poles that when it snows, a farmer can still see where his drive is. I went in between those at probably 60 miles an hour, and it caught my door on the driver's side and the passenger side doors there, and went right in between them, hitting a couple of pieces, but for the most part, the van made it through the middle of it. And I ended up going into this big ditch at a great rate of speed, but it had been snowing like crazy, so I was able to not die. Thankfully, the snow was able to catch my fall, if you know what I mean. So that was one of the really interesting stories with it. I've driven it all up and down the East Coast, all around New York City. I've I know what the van will max out at, and I actually had to have the governor removed because seriously, 99 miles an hour isn't quite fast enough at times. I'm sorry, and I'm not driving it right now, and the statute of limitations and all these are way beyond time, so you can't do much about it. But one of the funniest stories about this van was I was driving to a job. And for those of you that also don't know me, I used to work and deal with a lot of firearms. I did it all legally. They all were papered. They all were legally sold. I always went to the proper channels to buy and sell all my firearms because I'm not going to have some idiot that I don't know buy something from me and then go do something stupid with it. I always went through official channels. And I was in more of a hurry than I should have been. But I was doing a good cause. I was actually doing a job for the county, for Lynn County, Iowa. And I had to be there like yesterday. And so I was driving from Iowa City to Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And I was doing it on the shoulders and at full speed. And there were apparently 5 departments: the Iowa State Patrol, Johnson County, Iowa City Police Department, Coralville Police Department, North Liberty, Lynn County Police, Cedar Rapids Police, and a Marion. The Marion cop is the one who actually ended up clocking me, and he was surprised that the van was able to make those corners at the speed I was going. And I'm not going to quite tell you what he clocked me at, but he wasn't for sure if his radar was accurate, because he didn't think a van could go that fast, 2, around a corner that fast. And he said he wanted to search the vehicle. I'm like, be all my guest. He brought the dog around, and the dog triggered on something, and I still don't really know why the dog triggered. But he said, well, I'm going to search your vehicle. I'm like, okay, fine. And he opened up the back doors of the van, and he about lost it because he looked at me kind of startled, like, does that box say explosives? And I'm like, yeah, it does, and I have a permit for those. And then he was like, what else do you have? And I said, well, I have a bunch of AK-47s, AR-15s, Mosin Nagants, Mausers. I've got Remingtons. I was just naming off everything I had. And I said, I've got a couple of model 1911s. I got a Remington or a Springfield. Are you in the market by any chance? He's like, no, I'm not. And I'm also in uniform on duty. I'm not going to buy a gun for you when I pulled you over on the side of the highway. That's just nuts. I'm like, well, I have ammunition for everything too. We could go get papered today. And he's just like, you're weird. I'm like, that's what cops tell me all the time. So he was, did this whole search. Like, I gotta verify all this is yours. And so I'm like, okay, go ahead, knock yourself out. 30 minutes later, he's still going through everything, trying to make sure I have everything, and going through all the ammunition. He's like, what do you do? I'm like, well, I'm actually on a job for your county right now. That's why I have the box labeled explosives. And they wanted me to be there like yesterday, so that's the reason why I'm doing it. So he radioed it in and verified that my story was true and all this other stuff. And he came back to me like, okay, man, I got a couple of questions. I understand why you have the AR-15s, the AK-47s, the SKSs, the Dragunov sniper rifle. I understand why you have the ammunition, the Model 1911s. I understand why you have the grenades, okay, that makes sense. Okay, but what I don't understand, and you're going to have to help me with this, is why do you have a bunch of sacks from Route 21 with no receipts, all the tags on them, and they're full of sunglasses and like dollar items? And I had to tell them, well, I'm actually, along with the firearms, I'll sell anything. And I go around and I buy all the stuff on clearance at stores, and then I'll go do resell. And I do that a lot. And I've made a lot of money. In fact, this van, I used to haul around furniture with it. I used to go to auctions, 3 or 4 times a week, and I'd load this thing to the brim, and I'd be doing trips up and down the highway with it, back and forth, taking things to different stores for resale. And I made a lot of money at it when I was doing it. It was a lot of fun. It's just just the miles in this thing. This is a great camper van, and I had someone offer me today money for it, and I think I'm going to take the offer if they come, and if it actually materializes, because 1, I don't think they are. 2, if they pay me money and they don't pick it up within a certain day, I keep all the money, and I told them that was just going to be how it was, and they agreed. So that ought to be cool. But no, this is the Enterprise. and I'm the captain of the Enterprise. And I know when I get rid of this, I'll have to get another van, and it'll have to be newer than this one because I have to get a newer van to name it the Enterprise, and it'll be D. So I'll get to be Jean-Luc Picard, which is cool. I've always been a nerd and always will be a nerd. But yeah, that's the Enterprise, and that's a little bit of the story about my van. I've got a couple other vans I've got some other stories about, but today it's all about this one. I've been taking some cool photos with it because, again, I'm a nerd, and I think it's cool, and I'm trying to share that type of fun stuff with you guys. Anyway, until next time, peace out.